Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration, day 6 of Spawnmas. Apologies, I know this one's coming out a lot later than all the other ones have, but it is the holiday season, and we got parties, we got birthdays, we got tamales to be made. We got all kinds of stuff going on in our lives. So again, apologies that this one's late. Sneak it in under the wire. Will still come out on Sunday, day 6 of Spawnmas. Tomorrow, day 7. Issue 7 will come out. So just a quick reminder what we're doing to celebrate the 12 days of the Comic Source this year. We are reading the first 12 issues of Spawn as a little preview for the insanity that I'm going to do next year. And Rocky will probably join me as much as he can, which will be basically to attempt to read every issue of Spawn. There's about 320. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. There's about 320 issues. So, 365 days in the year. We should have plenty of time to get there. I mean, hell,
Crazy.
if we don't miss any days,
Yeah.
we'll have time at the end of the year to read some, like medieval Spawn and
Yeah.
some other Spawn kills the Spawn universe and,
It's going to be
what other
insane. It's going to
what
be
other
insane.
madness.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. So we've been rereading, and I gotta say, a lot better than I expected. The stuff holds up better than expected, at least for the first 4 issues for me. Issue 5 was a little bit rough, and this one, issue 6, I'm not sure. I'm not saying they're bad, but I feel like issue 5 and issue 6, I feel like issue 1 through 4, I felt like it could almost be a modern comic. A few tweaks here and there. They don't show their age. They're not as much of their time as I expected them to be. I feel
Yeah.
like issue 5 a little bit is, and issue 6 a little bit is, a little bit of its time, what was going on in the 90s in comics at that time. But I don't know. What do you think, Rocky? You disagree? You think issue 6 was just as good? What are your thoughts?
Well, I, I liked issue 6. Issue 5 I actually really liked. It's my favorite because it dealt with Billy Kincaid, the serial killer. I
Yeah.
scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. So I have a fondness in my heart for that crazy comic. And this with issue 6, I liked it. It's very tropey again, but especially from a modern day perspective, I guess, from dealing with overt kill, otherwise known as overkill in some people's minds. It's very tropey, but almost intentionally so. This is an assassin that McFarlane, once again engages. We've joked about it. We've talked about it since issue 1 on this, issues 1 through 5, that, this issue 6 continues with the heavy exposition, the tropey elements to it, reminding us what the story is so far, all the stuff. It's definitely, I guess, becoming classic McFarlane, I guess. But I still enjoyed this issue. It put a smile on my face, and we'll see. I actually had to remind myself it's been a while since I read issue 6, but I enjoyed it. So we'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it. So like Rocky said, Overt Kill is the name of the antagonist here, and right on the cover you can see, and we get into the '90s in terms of even his look. Giant shoulders, just a big, massive guy, very much kind of Hulk. Comes to mind, '90s Hulk or Bad Rock from Youngblood. So certainly get that feel. And right at the start, again, like Rocky said, all the exposition from McFarlane as we start out in Sicily. So we meet Overt Kill. He's this assassin or hitman for the Sicilian mob, and he's over there basically breaking down buildings because these people wouldn't pay their protection money. Which I mean, don't they usually kill the people and not destroy the infrastructure because then the mob can't make any money? And then the Italian army shows up and he kind of shrugs them off. And even when they have a weapon they think might be able to take him out, which is this tank cannon thing that's so massive, I don't know how it would actually move compared to the other tank at the size of the people. But overt kill jumps on it and destroys it before they can even get a shot off. And then we've got another very tropey scene of this guy in who's sort of tangentially involved with the homeless that Al Simmons is basically hanging out with these days. And again, it's it's the 90s. It's just coming out of the cocaine 80s. And so this guy's sniffing like every other sentence just to ram it home with no subtlety, once again, from Todd that, yeah, this guy wants to get himself some cocaine. And so he's like, I know who's been killing the mob guys. You bring me 10 ounces. I'm like, really? 10 ounces? That's not very much. He's only asking for, like, why not shoot for the moon? Bring me 10 pounds. Bring me 10 pounds of cocaine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But of course, he gets none because once he gives up the information, they just kill him. So I don't know. Like right away, that we're leaning far into the tropes. But what I will give McFarlane credit for is, it's all set up, right? It's all setting the mood and setting the stage. We're already on page 8, and we haven't even seen Al Simmons show up. So, I mean, that's confidence in your storytelling for sure.
Well, I have a
But I
question though. Up until this point, wasn't it the Violator that was killing the mobsters and not Spawn?
Right, right, it totally
So I
was. But
is-
yeah, this
yeah,
guy is just he's just making an assumption.
yeah.
He's just, well, there's this strange looking guy that's hanging out, and he may have heard rumors on the street that there was a big fight when Malabolgia showed up and whatnot. So yeah, he's like, I'm gonna tell these guys that it was this guy, and I'm gonna get myself some blow, some 10 ounces of blow, and yeah, he's totally wrong. It's not Spawn at all, which is why when Spawn gets attacked later, he's so confused. He's like, "What the hell have I done that this guy's after me?" Because yeah, this semi homeless guy, he's flat out wrong about it in the first place. But that doesn't stop these guys from going to their boss. The stoolie tells these low level mob guys, they go to their boss and say, "Yeah, there's some psycho hanging out in hobo society. Maybe he's a hobo himself." And so their boss, to his credit, and he's known as Dracula for whatever reason. He apparently likes to suck the life out of people, so they give him that name. But he's like, this guy's not to be taken lightly. I think we need to call the bosses back from the old country and bring in somebody that's an expert. So then the scene finally shifts. We finally actually see Spawn. We're all the way on page 10 before we see him, and he's hanging out with his buddies, and they're asking him like, why do you sit by yourself? Like, we all have secrets. We've all been through stuff, and Spawn's thinking, wow, these guys don't really have anything. All they really want is warmth and food and companionship and just to survive, from day to day. And I'm a stranger to them, and they still, welcome me. So he decides that he's going to open up to them a little bit and share a story. So this is McFarlane's way of giving us a recap if you haven't been reading Spawn up to this point. So he tells the story about Al Simmons, losing his wife and not being able to have a kid, and then his wife remarries his best friend, and they have a little girl, 15 months old, Cyan, and how horrible that is. That situation's tearing him apart, and so in order to lure Spawn out, and again, they don't know it's Spawn. They just know they've heard rumors some crazy psycho guy that's hanging out with the homeless is the one that's been killing these mob bosses, ripping the hearts out. So what do? They go down there and they just start killing homeless people, which is pretty horrific when you think about it. Another thing that might not necessarily play that well today,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, again, it's the '90s, and that's how McFarlane chooses to do it.
Yeah.
So
No subtlety. We know who the bad guys
yeah,
are.
yeah. And so as these guys are walking around talking about, well, we'll just whack a couple more and then we can go get some pizza and suck down some beers. Spawn shows up and kills those two guys. Well, he kills one, and then he asks the other one, like, okay, what you're after me? I want to know who it is that's after me, that's trying to lure me out, and more importantly, why. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
again, he wasn't the one that was taking the hearts out, so he has no idea why these guys are killing the homeless people and coming after him.
Yeah.
So at this point, they're like, yeah, okay, we really need the help, but all the heads of the family have to meet and agree. So sure enough, they all do, and Overkill makes his appearance again. Super tropey, so big he doesn't fit through the door. There's a Overkill size and shaped hole in the wall, and he goes after Spawn. But Spawn, after meeting Malabolgia last issue and understanding how or 2 issues ago, and understanding that he has a limited amount of power, decides that he he probably doesn't need. Well, actually, no, I'm jumping ahead of myself, aren't I? Yeah, he for some reason he goes to like a warehouse, and he's not. It was never clear to me why he goes to this particular warehouse. But when he gets there, Overkill shows up, and they have a battle. And it there's nothing really particularly notable about the battle, I guess, other than Overkill seems to be pretty evenly matched with Spawn. I think Spawn's trying not to use up his energy. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like he's trying to, yeah, he's just trying to preserve his energy, and he underestimates Overkill at first too. He doesn't realize he's a cyborg, and he's just sort of feeling him out, and he clearly underestimated Overkill. But
yeah, and
yeah,
it sort of seems like because he doesn't know why Overkill is after him. He's still kind of he's sort of baffled, like, why are you guys coming after me? Can't you just leave me alone? You know that he doesn't take it maybe as seriously as he should have. But what I do like is the fact that McFarlane leans into the point that this giant cape, these chains that he has, maybe aren't the best when it comes to fighting, right? Like they're a little bit of a liability. Spawn hasn't really learned to control the chains. In fact, at one point, the chains sort of have a life of their own, and they start choking Overkill. Um, so that's kind of interesting. I do like that because yeah, it's not exactly this cape's not exactly being that it's so big and billowy, not exactly what would be easy to fight in. And then we get a little bit of a Terminator homage when Overkill tries to punch Spawn, and Spawn dodges, and Overkill's hand gets caught between these two massive gears, and when he pulls it out, it's kind of broken off, and he gets mad, and he's like, Overkill's like, you're a little more challenging than I thought. And at that point, when he rips his hand off, that's when that kind of light bulb goes off in Al Simmons' head, and he's like, oh yeah, Cyborg. I fought them before. They can be deadly, and I don't know. He definitely, like Rocky said, he underestimates Overkill, and he Overkill, we learn, has fought Youngbloods before. That's a shout out to Rob Liefeld's Youngblood comic, and he thinks Spawn's one of them. But he really gets the kind of the jump on Spawn, and even to the point where he thinks that Spawn's dead, and he's kind of egging him on. Come on, fight me, show your power, and it's kind of tropey here. He thinks Spawn is dead, and Spawn's laying there thinking, dead. Why does he think he's dead? His external sensors must have been damaged when his arm was shattered. That my heartbeat wasn't even registering. I'm like, Spawn? Why do you think that you even have a heartbeat? Coming
yeah.
back from the dead, having had your heart removed at some point. I guess he feels it beating, knows it's beating, but he does have to use up a little bit of his power to heal himself. He heals his broken arm, but not his broken ribs, and thinks, man, I definitely underestimated this guy. Um, I, I I think I need some more firepower because I could easily take out somebody like Billy Kincaid, but this guy's a lot more powerful than I'm used to going up against. And again, he doesn't want to use up his power. So at this point, he uses his knowledge. What does it say? Well kept secrets from when he was in the CIA, and he goes to this sort of secret weapons cache from the U.S. Army, and straight out of the 90s, he decks himself out with bandoliers of ammunition and giant guns and pouches and grenades. Like it's Spawn has become Cable here at the end of the issue. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, really tropey. And just I don't know, the pacing I thought was kind of weird, and the dialogue felt a little more dated. So I don't know, this one. And I want to say that I remember liking this when I read it way back when, um, but I don't know, it didn't do it for me this time.
Well, it was very tropey, and it was, I mean, it's funny. People back in the day, and this was, and I think this issue was September of 1992. This was, people always talk about Rob Liefeld's Youngblood and about how he had all the shoulder pads, and we all know that the classic Liefeld drawing of exaggerated chests and shoulder pads and crazy looking belts. And but Spawn here being all decked out, actually it's only because McFarlane is frankly a better at drawing proportion as an artist. But this is a ridiculously outlaid Spawn as well. Bullets around his shoulders, chains everywhere, great big skull for a belt buckle. I mean, that would put put a bull rider to shame. Surrounded by weapons, oversized guns on his back, on both arms. I mean, it's absolutely insane. He's got like knives. He's got belts on both legs, big belt around the waist. I mean, this is just a better drawn Liefeld, really. But it's fun. I mean, it's fun. He the character. Couple of things in this issue that might be worth pointing out. For the first time in this issue, we are told the name of Wanda Blake's son is Cyan. Wanda Blake, his wife, daughter. Sorry, thank you. Daughter Cyan, and her and his best friend, of course, are married. We got more of that exposition we talked about before, where I mean, it's so funny that he tells the bums his story. This issue was McFarlane reminding people that Al Simmons, not only is he a great guy, but now he's going to befriend all these street people, and of course all his friends are being killed by the mafia. This Don, this mafioso is like super evil, and he wants Overkill to take tells him, find this guy, kill him, give me his heart. I mean, this is over the top evil. There's no really anti-hero here. This is just over the top bad guy and then making, because we know that Al Simmons is a former government sort of covert agent that was in his own way did some bad things for the government. And I don't know how but I mean, clearly we know Al Simmons must be a killer too, and yet McFarlane tries to go out of his way to make everybody that he fights that much worse than what Al Simmons must have been. And of course, Al Simmons is great. His ex-wife is gorgeous. So again, it's more of this stuff that's been in the last, I don't think any of this is really necessary for us to enjoy the character. But McFarlane just keeps reminding us of the story, reminding us of how wronged per Al Simmons was, and now he's got this ridiculous overt cyborg killer that's going to go after him. I mean, it really is something that it's I mean it's fun. It's a fun read. I wish Overkill wasn't killed right away, or like he doesn't like. Well, we're gonna get into the next issue, but I wish he'd last a little longer. But the one good thing about about this is that this is setting up good old fashioned. Spawn is beaten up, and then he comes back, and then of course we'll be getting to that in the subsequent issue. But it's just these stories are simplistic. Like they're simplistic. But they're fun. Definitely you can notice a difference to modern day storytelling, because this is something where normally if an artist puts this much skill into drawing a character like Overkill, they would last longer than 2 issues.
That's true. Well, you wouldn't want to kill him off, because then he can't come back in the TV show.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, I think Overkill got his own action figure anyway, despite only being around for 2 issues. So
yeah, maybe that's what McFarlane had in mind all along.
It might, yeah. But
what I find, yeah, I'll go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the other thing that I find interesting is, so like early on, we knew right from the start that it was Violator that was actually taking out the heart of these mobsters. And so, like you pointed out, there's not really a reason why that cocaine junkie just assumes that it's Spawn that's doing it instead. I'm making the assumption that it's because he heard rumors about this fight in the alley, which that was between Violator and Spawn, and he's putting 2 and 2 together, and maybe he knows it's not even true, but he's trying to get his 10 ounces of blow, right? So
yeah,
it's not actually Spawn who was doing anything to the mob, but yet because of the misunderstanding or whatever reason that you want to apply to it, because of that, and because of the mob sending Overkill after Spawn, it then does become, at least for the first part of the series, Spawn against the mob. So when you stop to think about that, how much sense does that really make? We're talking about like uber powerful this uber powerful person, right? Spawn, who has these incredible power. He can teleport, he can heal himself, he can do all this stuff. Now, granted, he doesn't want to use his powers, or he wants to use his powers as little as possible because they're limited. But I still find it to be an interesting dynamic that McFarlane decides that he wants to kind of the first big bad. I'm not talking individual villains because, yeah, like Rocky said, last issue was Billy Kincaid. Obviously, we have Overkill for this issue and next issue. But behind that, like the power behind all these villains that he takes on early on is the mob. And it's like, was McFarlane trying to lean into like the crime noir, like, because later it gets all into the religious aspect and supernatural and what have you. There's a little bit of that here, but it's almost like in the beginning it was a little bit of fish out of water. Let's have Spawn, let's have his powers, let's have Al Simmons. But in a way, he's sort of dealing with threats that are kind of a little more what he was used to when he was a hitman. Like, these are street level characters, right? While he finds his footing.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Violator wasn't that, but for the most part, it's Spawn against the mob, which I just find interesting. Why did you have to give Al Simmons such incredible powers if you were just going to put him up against the mob?
Yeah.
You could have not given him any powers, or you could have gone the other way and not had him be up against the mob when he comes out. I don't know. It always seems strange to me, and I'd sort of forgotten about it until I read this issue. I'm like, yeah, it always seems strange to me that as powerful as Spawn is and how rooted in supernatural he is, that McFarlane has him going up against the mob first
At,
off. Like,
and what's funny is visually, as an artist, I find it very interesting that the one thing that every one of his villains that he's drawn so far in these opening 6 issues, every one of the villains has a shit-eating grin on his face. Whether it's
yeah,
the Violator, the Devil, the mobster here, shit-eating grin on his face. Look at the 2 mobsters in the alley when they're shooting the bums. I mean, they're literally shit-eating. One guy looks like the Joker, and the other, so he draws the shit-eating grin with the bright white teeth and the black shadow. The whole body's a shadow of these mobsters, but you can see the white teeth on this black shadowy figure, and then these big honking 1990s oversized sunglasses on these mobsters. I mean, it's just kind of funny. And the other thing that stands out, and I've never gotten an answer for this, and because I stopped reading Spawn after like the 12th and 13th issue, I can't remember exactly when, back in the day, but I wonder, how does Spawn know that he's running out of power? Like, I know that the devil told him, or that he was kind of told that, but does he actually feel his body? Does he know he's got so many days or years left of power, and like, does he have an internal gauge that he knows? Like, because I always kind of wonder, well, how does he
yeah, we
know?
see it. We see it on the comic book page. We see the little graphic with the numbers.
Is that what
But
that is?
yeah, like whenever he uses his powers,
Is that what
let's
that numbers gauge is supposed to be?
yeah, because if it starts in the first issue, it's like 4 9s, and then as he uses his powers, it counts down. Which that was the other thing that I
I
always wondered,
never
like,
noticed that. I've never noticed that. I've always
yeah,
wondered what those numbers were. I thought they were like I didn't know what they were. I
yeah, because it starts off as 9999, and then in this issue it starts the issue on page 10 when he shows up first. It's 8092. And I don't know if McFarlane ever worked out a formula or do this and it uses that much power or whatever. But I did
huh.
always wonder, I'm like, okay, so you have 80% over a little over 80% of your life force or whatever you want to call it left. Like, why not just blast the hell out of Overkill like from the beginning, as opposed to a long drawn out battle that may in the end up using more? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if you try to use just a little tiny bit, just blast, but again, yeah,
Huh.
it's a good question. And I don't know,
Okay.
maybe we learn that later on farther
Well,
back than I
the
than
reason
I
why
read.
that confuses me a little bit is the placement of where he puts those, that with sort of like the sand in the hourglass with the
Yep,
numbers.
yep.
It seems out of place. He doesn't seem to be using those his powers when those things show up. So,
Well, he does. He does sometimes, but in this issue, he doesn't. And you're right. Where that should have been was it should have been on the it should have been on the page where he used his power to heal his arm, because early on it is like the first time he uses his power,
oh, okay,
uh, the way back in issue 1 or issue 2, it
right.
does. That's when it does show up, and it shows that his power is diminishing. But I think for the most part, when he does use his powers, is when those numbers do show up, but not always. But regardless, it's a good point. I mean, we see that, but doesn't mean that he does. Like it, and we'll point it out in the next issue when we get to it, because I
Yeah.
know for sure it does in there when he uses his powers, because he does something with his powers next issue. That's the first time that he ever does it, and it actually doesn't use as much power as I would have thought it was based on what he does. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
this issue again, it's a little bit of its time, and it did remind me about that whole mob thing, which I just didn't think made sense. But eventually, and we'll get to this because we're doing the first 12 issues. We start talking about characters like Angela and whatnot. That's when you start. Now you're getting into antagonists for Spawn that are sort of in his wheelhouse, that are supernatural in nature. So, anything else to add on this one, Rocky?
No, it was just a good more McFarlane stuff. Next issue, was I enjoyed a little bit more, where there's of course the second confrontation between Spawn and Overkill, which we will get to on day 7 of 12 days of Spawnness. Ho ho ho!
That's right. So don't forget, everybody, if you're listening on the audio only, be sure you head over to YouTube, do a search for Comic Space Boom exclamation point. That's Rocky's channel. Be sure you ring that notification bell so you know when he puts up new content. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. Conversely, if you're checking us out on YouTube, be sure you go to your favorite podcasting platform or app on your smart device and do a search for the Comic Source. Give us a subscribe as well so you can be sure not to miss out on any of our audio content. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thanks for joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.